Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Welcome to Manchester on behalf of the National Autistic Society. Fantastic to have Robin chairing this. Last time I was with Robin was in a bar quite late at night. She had her guitar and she was forcing me to sing with her. Hopefully that won't be repeated over the next 2 days for your benefit. It was perfectly enjoyable for me, but it probably won't be that enjoyable for the rest of you. I'm just going to spend 20 minutes just setting out some of the developments which have taken place within the National Autistic Society Centre for Autism over the last year and some of the things that are happening in the current year. The reason I'm not taking questions isn't because I don't like questions. It's because, as Carol said to Robin, we don't let him talk about anything technical. So we'll save your question time for the people who really have got some good content. It was about just over a year and a half ago at the second NAS professional conference that I announced that Carol Povey had been appointed as the director for the NAS's Centre for Autism, and it was her job to try and make sense of what that meant and to try and pull the work together both internally and externally to do that. And I think it's quite apt that the title for this year's conference is Working Together for Better Outcomes, because if there was a brief for the NAS Centre for Autism, or if there was a brief that Carol had been given, it was exactly that. How do we get people working together to deliver better outcomes for autistic people? How do we create a more strongly networked autism community? And some of the developments and some of the speakers and some of the content within the lunchtime sessions, demonstration sessions, highlight some of the work that's already taken place on that. And I'll also touch on some of the other projects that are ongoing at the moment, for which we're looking for support as well. So support from people in this audience, people who might be interested in getting involved in some of those projects. You'll be able to catch up with Carol on that. But I just wanted to put some context into where we are at the moment. The world is a very uncertain place if you're an autistic person, particularly at the moment, largely due to the people who work here. If you think about the change that is taking place at the moment in the health and social care environment, in education, in the policy environment, if there is any particular piece of policy, legislation that might impact on an autistic person, it's probably being changed at the moment. And I think that represents a significant challenge to organisations who are trying to deliver better outcomes. And it means that we have to really try and keep autism on everybody's agenda. In the good old days, there'd be a change in education, and we'd all focus on an education campaign and make sure that autism was kept up that agenda. But now, at this single moment in time, we're looking at changes in special education needs, we're looking at work capability assessments, we're looking at transfers of incapacity benefit to personal independence payments, we're looking at disability living allowance, we're looking at mobility components, we're looking at housing, we're looking at social care funding. The whole thing is in a state of flux. And for us as an organisation and other campaigning organisations, many of whom are here, that represents a significant challenge to what are very small policy and campaigning and lobbying teams. But what we mustn't forget when we do that work, it's not just about meetings with ministers, civil servants, politicians, trying to get the policy right. It really is about people's lives. And I often say, this is a human story. All this change is creating uncertainty for hundreds of thousands of people every day. It's not just a job, it's about a human story. And so we have to keep focused on making sure that the people in this place get things right and we don't lose track of what is actually happening to people's lives every day as a result of those changes. Keeping autism up the agenda is important, and one way in which we can do that, one of the levers that we can pull, is the adult strategy. Now, this was launched nearly 2 years ago, and the adult strategy, for many, they felt, well, it's not really changed very much. Well, of course, it hasn't changed very much. National legislation, policy, strategies don't change anything unless change really happens on the ground. Change has to happen at a local level to transform services at a local level. And if we look at the research that we've done for the National Audit Office on how progress has been made over the last year, there's been some positive progress. 3/4 of all local authorities now have got a named autism lead. That is a bit of progress. Over half have now got autism partnership boards or their equivalent. nearly all areas within each region are actually starting to work together. The NICE guidelines, NICE adult guidelines, are due to come out shortly, which should hopefully transform the diagnostic pathway for adults, which is a really key change. But really, that's not enough. People affected by autism, autistic people, haven't really felt any real change yet. And so we have to keep pushing on this. And the big opportunity for us to push on this is in 2013, probably towards the end of 2013, when there will be a review of the strategy. And I think that we have to make sure that we are honest with ourselves, that whilst we can say, well, it's been great having a strategy and we've made some progress, actually things haven't changed that much. And we have to make sure, that's all the people in this room, your colleagues, have to make sure that you contribute to that review in an honest way to make sure that we don't lose the traction that we currently have. It will be tempting in a time of sort of economic challenge to actually pull back from some of the commitments in that strategy as part of the review. And we need to make sure that we keep the pressure on to make sure that some of those changes start to deliver real benefits at a local level. Now, there is no doubt that local authorities, in trying to transform their services, will be looking to professionals and practitioners like yourselves to make that difference at a local level. And one of the things that we've been committed to doing within the Centre for Autism is to create an environment where you can all learn and share good practice amongst yourselves, so that we're not reinventing wheels constantly, and so that we can learn from each other and create a really vibrant autism community. And one of the steps that Carol's taken over the last year and a half is to develop Network Autism, which is an online community designed for professionals and practitioners working within the field of autism to do just that, to share experiences, share learning, put discussion papers up there, put think pieces up there, so that people can start to have a debate online and learn from each other. And that is being launched at this conference today. And there is a suite where you can go in and look at Network Autism, see how it works, and more importantly, sign up to it and become members of Network Autism so that you can start to learn from colleagues, not just within the UK, but outside the UK as well. And we see that as a significant development in trying to create a more strongly networked autism community, which was one of the briefs for the Centre for Autism when it first started. So that's professionals and practitioners. But what about parents? What about autistic people? We have a situation at the moment, and it's been a very vibrant debate within the NAS. You know, everyone knows if you Google autism, you come up with about 32 million hits. All sorts of interventions, treatments, cures, the whole range of information. Imagine if you are someone who's just received a diagnosis. Imagine how confusing that world must be. Imagine if you cannot go to a definitive answer as to what works and what doesn't work. The challenge for us at the moment is that as research funding is woefully inadequate and woefully low and woefully pressurised at the moment, there is a rapid increase, almost an exponential increase in people offering causes, cures and treatments. The NAS has a responsibility to try and do something about this, to try and provide better guidance to parents and people who are confused by this array of interventions, when actually we haven't got the time and we haven't got the resources to come up with definitive research that actually says that works, that doesn't work. So one of the pieces of work that we're going to be working on over the next 12 months is looking at how we can bring professionals, practitioners, parents, autistic people together to actually discuss a range of these interventions and start to provide online more guidance, more advice to parents, people with autism who are confused by this range of interventions. It's almost a halfway house between knowing nothing and full-blown research, but we really have to take responsibility for trying to reduce the levels of confusion which exist at the moment into this whole range of interventions. The other challenge for us is the economic climate. Those of you who are involved in service provision will know that money is tight and will know that levels of care are being pressurised and being reduced in many cases. We also all know the horror stories around inappropriate care, care that is completely away from anything which looks like good practice. And we have a responsibility through our Autism Accreditation scheme to try and ensure that the highest possible standards are met in all services that are supporting people with autism. Now, when I started at the NAS 4 years ago, and I went around talking to partners, other organisations, it's fair to say that autism accreditation wasn't flavour of the month. And it had its critics, and it had its critics internally within the NAS as well. But I also recognised that a robust system of accreditation and standard setting was absolutely essential if we were going to deliver the best possible outcomes for autistic people. So the approach we took was to have some changes within autism accreditation, and we appointed Robert Pritchett as the director with a brief to transform the accreditation scheme and to make it fit for purpose for the 21st century. And in typical Robert style, he came forward with a proposal which had a very large price tag. We negotiated over that, and we invested a significant amount of money to transform the system, which includes developing an online version of autism accreditation, which should help to further increase standards, but more importantly, increase its accessibility as well. And there's a demonstration of the new system upstairs near the quiet room, where there's a number of people from Autism Accreditation there for you to visit and to talk about the new approach that we've got there. Now, this is already starting to show positive rewards to people using the scheme. In less than, well, since April 2011, so in about 9 months, we've increased the number of members to the scheme by 20% as a result of the changes that we've made. So any of you who are interested in autism accreditation, I would encourage you to go and look at that, because we see it as a key tool for really trying to raise the standards in service delivery, hopefully to provide better outcomes for autistic people. The other development is that time passes. It's the NAS's 50th birthday this year, and we have a number of events lined up to really celebrate the great work of our founders and of our previous chairs and trustees. But we've also got some significant projects taking place this year, which will really help to mark the 50 years of sort of building up knowledge, expertise, services within this particular sector. It's interesting that, you know, the NAS started with a group of parents, often said, meeting around a kitchen table, and when they were told that their children were uneducable, psychotic, and they decided they were going to do something about this, pioneering parents. If all the people who said that they were there were actually there, it must have been a very big kitchen table. But certainly we know who the people were, and some of them are here today. But we started setting up a school, and it's interesting, to mark our 50th anniversary, we've taken advantage of the free school agenda. And last week, by the deadline, we submitted our bid for one of the first autism-specific free schools in Reading, the Thames Valley Free School. We now have to keep our fingers crossed for a few months to see if our bid has been successful. But it's certainly attracted quite a bit of good quality media coverage, raising the profile of the need for improved and increased provision in the education sector for autistic children. So that was our free school. We also have a project which again reflects the ageing, if you like, of the NAS. You can almost track the life cycle of the NAS by the changing needs of the people that we've supported. So we had the schools, and then we've had our adult services, Somerset Court, for instance, supported living, transition services. And now, of course, the big topic is how do we support older people with autism? A project that I've referred to as Autism and Ageing, and I regularly get wrapped across the knuckles by Carol, who says it's much better to call it Autism in Maturity. But this is a project that is going to look at how can we best support older people with autism, a really critical issue. And if you want to know more about that project, there's information in the Centre for Autism part of the website, but also Carol's here, and she'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. Another call for help for parents, carers, autistic people in this room who may like to get involved in a particular project, which we're shaping a bid with the Institute of Psychiatry to look at how we can improve the outcomes, so a fairly general, big scope, improve the outcomes for autistic people. We're currently looking at shaping that bid, and anyone who's interested in being involved in that Institute of Psychiatry project, please speak to Carol or Gilly Baird, who I don't think she's here today, but I think will be here tomorrow, if you're interested in knowing more about that project and getting involved in that project, because they'd be more than happy to talk to you about that. That project is also being run by Emily Simonoff as well. So if you want to get involved in that, please speak to Carol or speak to Gilly. So to conclude, when we started the Centre for Autism, we were looking at how can we really transform life for autistic people? How can we help autistic people lead the life that they choose? And we are only going to achieve this if we work together. And hence the title of the conference, Working Together for Better Outcomes, which is what this is all about and which is what I hope you take advantage of to do. And I hope you all have a great conference. Thank you very much.